The Creatives with AI podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Creatives with AI podcast. I'm your host, David, and on today's episode, we have an engaging conversation with Joanna Kocik. She's an ex-journalist and editor with over 13 years of experience, who's now doing content creation and strategy with a company called Authentica in Poland. We have an amazing conversation where we talk about how publishers are struggling with a lot of other things besides AI, and it just really isn't even on their radar at the minute. So quite an interesting conversation for those people who might be into content creation or looking at publishing in general. Anyway, let's get started.
The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.
Morning, Joanna. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Good morning, David.
How's everything in Poland today?
Very typical November, meaning it's gray and a little bit rainy, but I'm very fine, thank you.
I can empathize with the weather. That's usually UK weather is pretty much the same, gray, rainy, chilly. But luckily today, for some reason, I'm looking out the window. The sun's out. There's not a cloud in the sky today. So we've got lucky with the weather here.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe start off by just giving us a little bit of background. I mean, obviously, I reached out to you because you've had a wealth of experience as a journalist and working in journalism for a long time. And I think that whole topic, I haven't had a journalist on the podcast yet. So hopefully I can ask some interesting questions and we can have a good discussion, but maybe start off by just telling everybody how you got here and sort of what you're doing at the minute to give a bit of context.
All right. So my name is Joanna Kocik and I was a journalist for 13 years. I worked in the biggest digital media outlets in Poland. I worked purely in digital, I never had this experience of working for like a real newspaper. So that was interesting because I joined the media when internet was only starting to be the big thing. And some people were thinking, no, we don't really need internet. We'll just stick, to like traditional TV, traditional papers.
Yeah.
And about 3 years ago, I decided to switch sides a little bit and decided to engage in content marketing and in growth marketing, in content creation. I was freelancing for some time, creating different kinds of articles and blogs and podcasts, and also writing my own stories, my own features, and even my own book. And for some time now, I've been involved with work with Authentica, which is a Polish consultancy and delivery team that designs custom solutions for media organizations. So like the insight I had from the media could be easily transferred to what we're doing in Authentica, because I was working on, of course, some tools and some software for journalists. And now I take part in crafting content strategy around this software and around those tools, including AI tools. So that's super interesting to be on the other side. And I still have a lot of contacts in the journalistic world. So lots of interesting conversations going on. But yeah, that's pretty much my story. And maybe it's a good time to mention that just recently I had the pleasure to release a trend book, The Newsroom of Tomorrow, gathering insights from media professionals and experts about technologies used in various media organizations and like real life use cases of innovation, of AI concepts, of AI solutions, also editorial analytics. So still in this world, somewhere at the intersection of tech and media, which is actually very interesting and very exciting market.
No, that's genius. And I'm glad you snuck the book in there quite quickly. I do have a question about the book that we'll get to in a minute. So we will circle back around on that. One of the things, obviously, that I was curious about is how your experience in the actual traditional media and journalism world has affected your view on AI and your approach to integrating AI into the newsroom of the future. So I was wondering if you could maybe just talk a little bit about that and kind of how those traditional values, I guess, and those traditional ways of working have now, are affecting the AI and the way that AI works in journalism.
Maybe I can use a kind of analogy, which is quite good in terms of what is happening with AI right now in the world of journalism. That, some people are super hyped, some are a little bit suspicious, but like everyone is using it, even, they are not telling their bosses. But I think we witnessed a similar thing with automated translation when Google Translate started to be really good. When I was working in digital, it was like a must for a journalist to know at least 2 foreign languages, even passively, to read, to be just able to understand a written text in English, German, French, Spanish. Yeah. But with Google Translate and with other automatic translators that are actually quite good right now, it is of course, it's very useful, but it's no longer, I think, a must have, because those tools, although they were not very perfect at the beginning, now serve as a tool that really streamline the work process, because you can put the whole long text into the translator and get at least an idea what it is about. And I think we're observing a similar thing with AI. So it's, for now, I'd say it's a tool that can reduce some redundant tasks, that can streamline the work process, that can speed up the work process. And it's used exactly as we use Google Translator, as we use some other useful tools and features. But I wouldn't say that it's the core of the strategy of most media for now. To be honest, I haven't seen any strategy yet that would include AI and at its heart. So for now, it's mostly investigating the opportunities and the chances and assessing risks at the same time. But of course, I think it's going to be a revolution. It is already a revolution, probably the biggest one since first papers went digital. And we witnessed this boom of internet. And there are 3 areas that everyone says AI is most useful at. And these are news gathering, news production, and news distribution. And this is pretty obvious, because with AI, we're able to extract information from large amount of data. We're able to write faster using generative AI, especially useful for content like weather reports, sport reports, horoscopes.
Traffic,
yeah.
Traffic's another one. I was actually listening to the person who does my sound engineering for the show is also a DJ, and he does a morning show in the UK. And we were just discussing yesterday, because the traffic is done by AI. So it's an AI voice and everything. So it all just gets dumped in and automatically read, which was, I thought was really interesting. So he and I were having a discussion about it, he was asking me whether I knew it was AI when I heard it. And I did, but that's because I do this all the time. But I think if somebody was just in their car and they were listening to the radio, they probably wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, but now a question, is traffic information journalism? Because, some people would argue. Journalists still treat their profession very seriously. And nobody starts studying journalism or applies for a media organization to write a traffic report. People want to deliver impactful stories. They want to, go out in this world, talk to people, uncover some facts, uncover scandals, change someone's life, maybe even change the law. Yeah, that's the high goal that we all as journalists aim for and we strive for. Yeah. So you mentioned how is this technology and values in journalism right now? Well, I worked in big media organizations that were really content machines. We produced thousands of pieces of content every day. And this volume was important because that was what brought money, because that was what brought ad visibility and, all those profits from ads. But at its heart, I think journalism is still one of those professions with a mission, and you can't really bring it down to pure technology and pure numbers and pure profits, because I hope it's never going to look like that. And those values and this mission is still very important for a lot of people. Some time ago, I talked to one of the biggest experts in AI in journalism, Charlie Beckett, and he told me, I haven't practiced for like 7 or 8 years, but I'm sure if I walked into a newsroom today, I could get up to speed quite fast because the journalism really hasn't changed. The tools have changed and technologies have changed, but even if someone, even a journalist from, 1980s was transferred to 2023, maybe he could, have some difficulty with technology, but not the essence of what journalism is itself.
No, that's a fair point. And I think I really like your point about translation as well. Maybe one of the fun things we can do is we can take some clips of this after the podcast is finished, and we can use something like 11 Labs, and I can translate it into Polish, and then we can share them in Polish as well, because it will, there are tools now that will just translate it. There's also another platform, and again, I don't have any interest in any of these platforms. I just use them for fun, but there's another one called HeyGen, and it will do the same thing with the video, but it will also alter the mouth shape so that it looks like you're saying the words in whatever that language is, which is really, really clever. So yeah, from that perspective, it's amazing. Okay, that's cool. And I sort of like the way you're approaching that. And I guess this is something that you also talk about in your book. So again, The Newsroom of Tomorrow is the book where I think you sort of explore future trends in media and journalism with a little bit of a crystal ball. And so I guess, what do you see are the most significant ways that AI is going to transform newsrooms? Obviously, we've talked about, doing maybe the less journalistic stuff like weather. The weather's interesting. Google, I don't know if you saw the article, but Google DeepMind, they pointed DeepMind at doing weather forecasts, and it's actually like more accurate than normal weather forecasters, and it can predict much further in the future. So apparently the weather industry was very skeptical in the beginning, but DeepMind has predicted a couple of things like the paths of hurricanes and things, and they predicted it exactly. And so the whole weather business is now looking at how it can use AI to enhance weather prediction. And I'll put a link to that article and some of the stuff we've talked about also. So if we talk about anything in news stories and whatever, I'll put links to all that in the show notes. But yeah, how aside from doing the boring stuff, I want to call it that. What do you see? How do you see it changing news?
Yeah, just before the answer, I want to relate to what you said about AI being more accurate than people. That's like we already know that technology and algorithms are better than people. It's just that we don't want to trust them, because if something happens, then who's to blame? Like take, autonomous cars. Right? They are like safer and statistically like better than the cars that we drive as drivers.
Yep.
But any case of accident or fire is like, so hyped by the media that we just all think, oh, no, it's dangerous. We can't use this technology. So I think that's something that we'll have to address at some point. What if AI makes a mistake? Like, who's to blame? But coming back to your question, I saw a very interesting survey by Reuters Digital News, and it says that like the general trust in news dropped by several percent in the past few years, and it's mostly among young people, meaning that young people who say that are really interested in what's going on in the world is just decreasing. It's dropping. And I think that maybe here AI has a real, chance to transform journalism, because if AI takes all, the boring stuff, weather reports and traffic reports, then like real human journalists will have more time and more space, and maybe they will need to be more creative to craft stories that somehow will spark this interest in news again. And also, journalism today and news brings a lot of negativity. We still we are reading about accidents, fires, wars, coups all the time. And we're just tired of it, especially after the pandemic and after the war in Ukraine. We're just tired, of this pessimistic narrative. So people are looking for new forms, such as solution journalism that brings positive stories from around the world. Maybe, new channels that are just not here yet, but will be in 5 or 10 years, like TikTok, right? 10 years ago, nobody thought we would have TikTok. And by the way, TikTok and Instagram are more and more treated as news channels. Actually, people, get their daily news and daily information from those channels. And it's totally possible to deliver serious news in this funny, gentle way, kind of infotainment, but also very personalized. So I think that AI, paradoxically, if it takes part of the redundant tasks, even part of the jobs, because that's I think that's evident that it will take a significant part of the job market also in journalism. So people who did this SEO journalism, this very easy content, they will just, they will be probably more expensive than AI, so they will just drop off. But I hope it will create some space for more quality journalism, the journalism that you still need to, go somewhere, talk to someone, dig into some papers. And I really think that might be a chance for more creative way of writing, of delivering stories, because we'll still need people, humans, who will guide us in this world, which is getting more and more complicated. We'll need someone real to explain it to us. That's the chance I see in development of AI, maybe, 5-10 years. And in the shorter perspective, it's difficult to say because we're still in this stage of testing and experimenting, not actually employing AI tools in daily workflows. And we still somehow lack this bridge between pure tech and AI in editorial software, editorial use. So this is still to come, but it will probably happen, in maybe 1-2 years.
Well, obviously Microsoft is building AI into all of its Office suite, and Adobe's built AI, full functionality into all of its tools, whether it's video or audio related or Photoshop and that sort of thing. So it's definitely coming, and it's going to be just part of that suite of products that, journalists and everybody uses. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be just journalists. So 2 things came out of that. One that came to mind. One is, have you seen the fully AI newsroom? So there is it's online, and I'll put a link to it, and I'll have to send it to you afterwards. I apologize. I didn't think of it ahead of time. I probably should have, but it's a fully AI read news, and you can essentially go on, and it's like a daily news show, and it finds the articles. So it's got a query, it goes out, it finds the most current articles. It's got an AI voice that reads it. And I think there's 2 different voices as well. So it's not just the same presenter the whole time. And it's really, really interesting to kind of hear how it presents stories, because it is quite dry, as you would expect. It's very factual, and it's here's what happened and blah, blah, blah. But I think we talked about this when we had our call before, is there, I guess there are 2 types of journalism. There's the factual stories about, it's the sports, the weather, the traffic, all that sort of stuff. It's what happened at the city council last night. How did they vote? All that sort of stuff is kind of one level. But then you have the storytelling aspect to it. And I think that's really what you're focusing and what you're talking about, is that storytelling element might actually it's going to be even more important for humans to do that. How far away do you think AI is from being able to do more of the actual storytelling aspect? And have you seen anything around that? Have you seen any tools? Have you tried anything to see if it can do the more storytelling aspect? I mean, obviously it can't go out and interview people and do the digging, but can it help support on actually writing the stories? Or do you think that's still really entirely a human thing?
Oh no, it definitely can write compelling stories. I'd bet that sometimes it's better than people probably in that. I think there are like two things here. And the first one is really this AI tsunami that we really see like more and more content written or prepared by AI. I'm referring to another study from June 2023, where US News Rating Service identified over 300 websites that operate with little or no human oversight and publish articles written mostly or entirely by AI bots. So that's six-fold increase since May. So that's huge. And we'll observe like more and more,
That's
magazines
massive.
or outlets that are like purely created by AI. And robots can do interviews. And there is one Swedish company, I think they're called United Robots, that designs those robots who can, who or that, I don't know, which word to use. That's tricky. Who can like interview real people or interview other robots prepared by people before. So, if you're writing a case study for your company blog, probably like in 2 years, you won't have to speak to anyone to prepare it, because you will train your robot, they will train their robot, and robots will talk. And
that would be amazing.
That's it.
And it'll be able to make a video and an audio and everything to go with it. You literally won't have to do anything. Brilliant.
Yeah. But the second thing I wanted to talk about is that at the same time, people are really becoming more demanding when it comes to news. They no longer look just for updates or for like conventional storytelling. They want also to be educated on certain topics, and sometimes they want to be educated on those topics by specific people. I think we'll have, AI influencers or AI superstars in journalism as well, but that might take time, and I think they will like never replace the best storytellers and the best journalists, because it's actually that we love technology because it helps us connect with other people, and when we like certain titles, or we like certain blogs or Instagram accounts or news because of certain people who work there. So we follow them. We want them to explain the world to us. We just don't want to be just updated, but to be entertained, to to be shown the context of the whole thing. Like, look at the influencer business at market. I mean, we follow people and we buy stuff they advertise because they advertise it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something very hard to be taken away from us. As much as AI is good at storytelling, there will always be like influencers and followers. Maybe not always, but in like the next decade, I think
there will always. That'll always happen, because that's how humans are. Yeah. I mean, that's just how humans are.
Yeah, we're just like connecting with people. And I think that in this, ultra technological world where we're all sitting in front of our screens and spending like most of our time online, there is this need of connection with a human. And I think we have to take care of that. For our own good as societies, as humanity. I know big words, but these are big questions.
Yeah, they are. And it's, I think, I don't know how it is there, but here, certainly after the lockdown, I think what happened is we saw like a lot of the kids weren't able to go to school. They studied at home online, or, the parents helped them or whatever. And it had a huge impact on them, I think. And what was interesting is my son in particular, is because he did a lot of online gaming, and he played online with all of his friends anyway. So when they were in lockdown, literally all they did was they just sat online and talked to each other anyway. So it wasn't much different than than maybe us back in the day when we just talked to our mates on the telephone all the time. So and actually a lot of the times they would play a video game together. So what they do is they play the video game online, they hop on Discord or something and they chat on Discord while they're doing it, like on a, just as a group chat. And so they were able to stay in contact, but there certainly is this thing where they don't, or at least in what I'm watching from my son and his group of friends, is there was a period where they were very reluctant to go out and they didn't want to go out. They didn't want to meet with each other and everything. But all of a sudden, I think they're all realizing that, hey, actually meeting with each other in person is actually kind of cool. And they really like it. And so there's like herds of children, young adults, adolescents out all around town all the time. And they're all just hanging out in big groups, which I haven't even seen in the past. Well, I've lived in Tunbridge Wells for like 12 years now, and I've never seen anything like it. And it's just happened in the last year or so. So I guess I'm sort of agreeing with you in saying that I think there's hope for people that, we do actually as humans really need that person-to-person contact. And, it's why I come into the office every day, because I just prefer being in a space where there are other people. Working at home is fine sometimes, but I just find that I prefer it being with somebody. I don't know. Are you seeing the same kind of thing there?
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. I'm a very social person and I also work at home right now. So, I have to somehow organize my free time. So I really go out and meet actual people because it's really important to me. Yeah. But I think that it's going to be a great generational challenge. And I hear from different people that engaging in real meaningful relationships will be a biggest challenge for, the young generation, because it requires not only effort, but it also requires your readiness for the possibility of being rejected. I mean, if you function only in online groups with, people you like and they like you, it's a different story than being in a group of people that some might like you, some don't, and so on. So, if you want to engage in a relationship with an AI generated man or woman, then you'll be always accepted and held and so on. If you engage in a real life relationship, there's always a risk of failure. And that's huge. I attended a conference last month and there was a great talk by Scott Galloway, who told the audience that he actually makes his two sons talk to strangers every time they go out on a walk.
Yep.
And sometimes it's very painful and it's really hard, but he wants them to make those connections, even asking for change or asking what time it is and so on.
I literally do exactly the same thing with my son. When we go out, I always have him order, make sure that he orders his own food and that he talks to people and that he talks to people in the shops and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't even realize that was a thing. I just thought that was kind of, the right thing to do, but it just seems to make sense. And he's from having done that, but I've done that his whole life, not specifically because, of COVID and lockdowns and everything else. It's just because I think I want him to be comfortable talking to people. Even if he's a little bit introverted, I still want him to be able to have the ability and the skill to be able to do that, because I think it's important. And I mean, I grew up in the South in the US, and we'll talk everybody's ear off, as everybody on the podcast who's listened knows. But anyway, yeah. So it's interesting that there are other people doing that on purpose.
Yeah. And coming back to journalism, I mean, how interesting an interview made by a robot interviewing robot, how interesting it would be. Is it something we want? I know we live in capitalistic world. We need to make money. Media needs to make money. But is it is it all? Is it the sense of that all? I don't believe it, because you can't just change human nature that easily. Like all the research, like there is this Cambridge research that has been lasting for 80 years. It's a research on happiness, what makes people happy. And the answers, like, they don't change, they don't change much. Like what makes us happy in life is love, family, relations, being kind to ourselves. It's that. So our nature is not that flexible, and in all this race, in all this digital acceleration, I think it's even more important to cultivate those values and this human perspective. Somehow it seems right for the world if we really want to live in a better world, because technology can make our world better. I have no doubts, but we need people behind it, and we need like people in all the contexts it creates.
Yeah, 100%. And I know you mentioned before, that you talked to people that you'd worked with, a long while back that was still more in traditional journalism. What do they think? Like, what's the conversation that you have when you go out for drinks or you're having dinner together or something, when it's just in a casual? What's their opinion? What direction does the conversation go? Is everybody worried about it, or does everybody think, wow, this is really cool because we can do a bunch more research faster? Or, are they using it to learn from? Or I don't know. What are those conversations like?
It's interesting because I'm observing how it has changed since, let's say, last year when ChatGPT launched. So at the beginning, there was this huge hype. Oh, it's going to write, all that boring stuff for me. It's going, to write article. I will just go make myself a coffee. So we saw those, like magazines generated by AI, some experiments that some online media published, okay, so today our editor-in-chief is AI and here's what he serves us. And then, of course, there were questions like, will it outperform humans? Will it replace journalists? And now I have a feeling, and it's not just feeling, but what I see proves that this hype is going down a little bit, because we already know what AI can do right now. Yeah, all the things that we've mentioned, speed up the work, do redundant tasks, but more and more people are being skeptical, because you really have to spend a lot of time training ChatGPT or any other model to make it produce really good content. It's not that easy, because the content it produces now, it's still quite generic. And sometimes I use ChatGPT every day, almost every day in my work, but sometimes I get frustrated because it takes me more time to prompt it properly than it would take me to, write the damn paragraph myself.
Yeah, there is always that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a huge help, especially if you're struggling with some ideas, or you don't know how to start, or you just need some little brainstorming. Because every creative job, I think you'll agree, is you can't be creative 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. You need also this time of not thinking, or doing nothing, because it's just not possible to have brilliant ideas, one after another. So yeah. ChatGPT, of course, helps.
Yeah.
But I'd say that the attitude is quite distant right now. I think people realized that they are not in such danger, maybe, as they thought it would put them, at least for now, because they are still cheaper than AI, probably. But generally, I see that journalists, they experience a lot of burnout, a lot of feelings that are connected with the loss of sense in what they are doing, because nobody just wants to be, a machine making money. People want to do something meaningful in life, and it's getting harder and harder in journalism. Because there is this race, there is this impact on goals, on numbers, daily outcomes, how many page views, how many users, and so on. I think that after 10, 15 years, just like me, like many people, they switch to something similar, marketing or PR or other jobs or domains where they can still use their creativity, they can still use technology, but they can like slow their pace a little bit. And another thing is that some people actually have also like bigger problems to worry about than just AI, because like take Poland, like past 10 years, we had conservative government of law and justice in power, and they totally monopolized public TV and public radio. So for 8 years, people who worked there either believed in, everything the government said, or they pretended they did, not to lose their jobs. So 8 years of propaganda and 8 years of, manipulative content. And now, like most of them, they fear about their jobs because the government is going to change. And then, like, there were also people who watched this TV for 8 years, and some of them like didn't have other sources of knowledge. So, that's like a big thing to manage. I mean, public media, that's huge power, right? When I talk to like people also in other countries, then they have also like other problems than just AI. Even like in the topics that some of them, were that their conversations were overheard, or that, they're dealing with some trials for defamation or something. Yeah. So there are like still a lot of problems that are present in the discussion, and AI is just one of them. But it will be, of course, very interesting to see like what's up in the future.
It's interesting that you brought up politics, because I just had a conversation yesterday, and I think the conversation I had will probably be the week before yours, but she's a lady who works for the UK government in Washington, DC. And one of the things that we talked about was the change in politics, because the US has a big election coming up this year. Yeah. Mexico has a big election coming up this year. The UK has a big election coming up this next year. And so it's widely expected, in certainly in the UK, that we're going to go from a conservative government to a Labour government. So we're going to have not a complete 180, but we're certainly going to have a change in the approach of the government and the politics and the things that they focus on. And it's exactly like you were saying. One of the big areas of focus for the current government is, the current government wants to be a world leader in AI. We want, the UK to be the leader in driving the conversation about regulation and all that sort of stuff. But we may get a new government next year, and that new government may not have that as a focus. They may be focused on entirely different things, like the rail strikes and the NHS strikes and the public sector, and a whole other set of priorities. And so it's really interesting that you say that, because there is, I like to live in this little AI bubble that I'm in, and, everybody's worried about AI all the time, but you're absolutely right. Not everybody thinks about AI 24/7, and it's not always the first thing, on the top of everybody's mind.
Yeah, especially that in newsrooms really have like bigger like technological problems than lack of presence of AI. And from our conversations at Authentica, we heard a lot of times that, AI, maybe it's not for us, or it's not the right timing, because sometimes, I think that like no newsroom has, as I said, like has implemented like a real AI strategy. It's all, people use it just by themselves. There is no like, a guideline that, okay, we use this tool. Some banned use of ChatGPT. That's like what I know, because they don't want, their content to be written by ChatGPT. Some banned ChatGPT from scraping and reading their news, like I think the Times, the New York Times, the Guardian. So they don't want AI to be trained on their content. Yeah. But in many newsrooms, like the real problem is not like lack of AI or presence of AI or help of AI, but the lack of like really efficient tools for some basic journalistic processes. And I'm not exaggerating, because I know a big newsroom that is dealing with a problem of disappearing paragraphs. The system sometimes cuts out the last paragraph of the article. Right. And then, a journalist writes a text, submits it to the editor, and the editor says, where the hell is the last paragraph? Why this story doesn't end? And it's the system, So if you have such a bug and you cannot fix it, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
Or there are CMSs that don't have autosave mode, so people use Word or Google Docs to write their stories because they are afraid they will lose their whole work.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's really not the question of AI tools and some fancy wizards, but the question of some basic infrastructure. And many media are still working on software that was developed 25 years ago. I'm not exaggerating. And this is still a standard in many newsrooms, at least in Central Eastern Europe. And I think that, the further
it's the same here.
Southeast you go, it might be the worst.
Yeah.
And as I say, still many newsrooms operate, as I call it, with string and pencil. And then a couple of months ago, I talked to a guy who runs a small team in Nigeria. And, he told me, what AI? We have power outages every day here. And I cannot, put something online because I don't have backup power source.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's good. And I'm glad you mentioned it, actually, because like I said, these conversations focus on, very much the kind of the UK, the US, and that sort of Western Europe type thing where we generally don't have those sorts of issues, but the rest of the world isn't like that. And so this could be a very focused sort of issue on one particular region of the world. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also I think that there are and there will always be pioneers. I mean, many media organizations are at the same time tech organizations. They have good design development teams, solid IT structures, and they can come up with their own solutions. Like Financial Times, The Guardian, The New York Times, big titles. But of course, they are, top of the top. But there are also local media, regional media. And first of all, they don't have that kind of money. Then they might not have that kind of talent internally to build, required solutions. So they are using market ready products. For example, but again, it's those big holdings, those big media groups are not the only media that exists in the world. We like to think like that, but in many countries, these are actually local and regional media that are more important to people because, of course, we care about what's going on, in the government, but we care most about things that are closest to us, our town, our neighborhood, what's happening locally. So I think it's also something we need to acknowledge that there are different kinds of media, and probably we'll see those two speeds. Media that will transform and progress fast, and those that will somehow stay behind. But again, that's nothing new.
No, you're right. It's always been that way. I think it's always been that way. So all of that actually leads into, and we have to talk about ethics, because if we don't talk about ethics, everybody will yell at us afterwards, because it's obviously a huge question, and it's a consideration that everybody has to have. And I think it's particularly sensitive around journalism as well, because you're delivering news, and in a lot of instances, you're delivering opinion and everything else that goes with it, or maybe not opinion, but some sort of a viewpoint about, explaining what's happened and what that means and what the context is. What are your thoughts on the ethics of sort of using AI? I mean, copyright and IP is one thing, which is a whole kind of separate discussion, but it just, I don't know, what's the ethical discussion like within the journalistic circles?
I think this is something that is treated like this dead rat, in the room and nobody really, you need to take it out, but you don't want to, and
no one wants to do it.
No one wants to do this. I know that EU is working on some kind of European guidelines for media in terms of AI and ethics. In Poland, we have just seen a launch of new organizations, an association of digital publishers, and their first goal, that's what they say, is to prepare some kind of ethical guidelines for newsrooms. I think the problem is that we really, we don't know what are the mid and long-term consequences of using AI and like how far those algorithms go. Yeah. And that's the hard part, because of course we can prepare some guidelines. We can always say that if we have a human story, then a human editor needs to read it at the end, because it might be something delicate. I also saw a study on the analysis actually of guidelines for AI in 52 newsrooms, and most of them were said to lack teeth and be very vague and very general. So I think that we're just really nowhere with this topic for now, because that's the paradox, is that AI can be as dumb or as smart as we are and as we train it. And what we can do, I think, is to include, in all those teams building AI models, in all those teams preparing ethical guidelines, we should include people from different backgrounds with different education, tech people, but also lawyers, but also journalists, and also women in tech, because otherwise we'll have, AI trained by our patriarchal system that will be biased as our world is in many aspects. So I think we really need diversity in those teams, in people who work with AI. And I'm not sure whether it's possible to, to create AI that will be free of bias. I don't know. I'm no expert. I don't know how you do it, really.
No.
I think that it can help in detecting gender bias or political polarization. Maybe, yeah, because even now, I think there is some kind of add-on to X platform that shows, this tweet is a bias. This is fake news, or this is probably fake news.
The community guidelines things where people can add to it and say, and add extra information to it. I know what you mean. It's really handy, actually. I like that. That was a good addition to the platform, I thought.
Yeah. So I hope it will become a standard. And here, this let's say, we'll have this ethical AI, maybe. And seeing how limited and restrained the open net really is. I mean, you can't, show a picture of a painting with naked woman, because it will be marked as some sexual content. Then I think those algorithms might have the opposite effect. They might somehow maybe even show us less than we could see.
It's interesting because, and I think the little ring, we could spend 3 hours just talking about this.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing though is I think the question that we have to answer as a society is, at the minute, what it is it's a mirror, I think. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing is we're just looking at the data as the data is. And what we're seeing we don't like, because people are biased.
Yes.
It's a fact. And so we have to make a decision of how we want the AI to be. Do we want it to show us a vision of the world as we think we want it to be? Or do we want it to show us the world as it is? Because if we start removing the bias that's in the data and we have it sort of tweak that somehow and give us different results, then what it's doing is it's now showing us a fictitious view of what the world is like. And do we want that? Or do we actually want to see the ugly truth that's behind it? Because
exactly.
When we see the ugly truth, at least we can talk about it and we can say, well, we need to do something to change how this works so that the data will then start to show it naturally. And it's a big question. And I don't know the answer to that, but
me neither. And it's big and it's really complicated because there are so many, little paths that you have to examine and take into account, or even the very essence of like who is responsible for those AI models. I mean, what kind of people work there? There was an article by Time that reported that OpenAI used Kenyan workers to improve ChatGPT's safety, and they paid them like nothing, $2 per hour. Or there was this movie about Filipino internet sweepers who remove that explicit content from various platforms. So that's like another rabbit hole, another well to examine. So it's such a huge topic. I don't know, maybe we should have, like we have this World Atomic Agency. Maybe we should have the World AI Agency and some smart people there who could somehow control it on a high level. So that I've heard those comparisons that AI is like, nuclear energy and it only depends on us how we use it. So maybe it would like make sense to really put, smart people together and ensure that we use this technology according to some like standards that are really human rights standards, and that we don't violate them.
No, it's amazing that you said that as well, because I was at an event earlier this year, and the challenge with ethics, of course, is whose ethics do you use, because different parts of the world have different ideas about what's right and wrong. But I'm trying to remember the lady's name. I'll try and remember it and put it in the show notes. But her point was exactly what you just said, which is the place we have to start is the human rights aspect, because we do have global agreement on human rights. And so when we start to come up with those global rules about AI, we have to start with those human rights framework. And that's the basis that we then start to build on, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm glad you got there as well.
Yeah, I think it was also in your episode, in the episode with Sherry Matthew, that he also talked about that we need, human rights as like some fundamentals for all AI regulations.
Yep. Shout out to Sharon. Right. Just one last little bit. So thank you for your time today. It's pushing on to an hour, so I'm conscious I don't want to take up your whole day. So just to sort of wind up the conversation, we've talked about a lot of stuff so far, but if you had to sort of distill it down into some words of advice or, some sort of future vision, what would that be to maybe people who are getting into journalism or who are thinking about it? Like, what would you say to those people now? Maybe kids, students who are at university or whatever.
Yeah, I think the first thing is not study journalism, because
don't say that.
No, it's true. It can be studied, you learn it in practice, and experience is everything.
All right. Yeah.
I mean, go study, I don't know, creative writing or some interesting part of the world. But I truly believe that studying journalism might be a waste of time, because again, people have those aspirations that they want to change the world, and they then end up in the newsroom writing weather reports, and it's not what journalism is all about. So I think that like the best recipe is actually to find your thing, to find your niche, to find something that truly like interests you and sparks this interest in you, because journalism is really, it's a hard job. It's like, it's not an easy piece of bread. And if you think that you can be a journalist and just sit in a newsroom and write articles with some help of AI, that's like, maybe you should, look for another job, because that won't bring you happiness and fulfillment.
No, 100%.
And it's also hard because it's still, you need to really talk to a lot of people, call a lot of people, be really pry in someone's life sometimes. So it brings a lot of also responsibility, and you have to have a thick skin. But it can be, of course, very rewarding, because from time to time you can do a really good thing for your community, for a hero of your story, or even for your country. And that's what like makes it so special still. And I think that it's really like the basic mistake people make is that they think it's easy and that it's like only writing articles, writing stories. And it's not. It's
way more complicated than that.
Yeah, and you have to be really like creative, and you really have to have your own ideas. And sometimes it's like hard to come up with an idea. But of course, if it calls, then go for it, because we'll need like smart people who could explain the world to us. But really, studying media history, might not be the best idea.
So become a specialist in some area and then use that
and be curious. I think we need everyone who wants to be a journalist needs to have this curiosity, this kind of wonder mindset that, you go out on a walk and you see, 7 topics that you could write about because, I don't know, you see a poster somewhere on the wall, you talk to someone. So I think this is crucial, to have this wonder mindset and look at the world with eyes of a child, so that you cultivate this curiosity inside. And that's it.
Love it. I think that's great advice. Okay, so just quickly, a few quick fire questions at the end that I like to ask everybody, just out of personal interest more than anything else. So in your mind, do you envision AI as being male or female?
I think male, unfortunately.
Okay, interesting. Is there a particular reason?
I think because in Polish, we have to use inflections. So if you say, could you have to define the gender. And when I talk to ChatGPT, I usually ask in masculine form. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And well, that's a great point, actually. Does AI or artificial intelligence, does that have a gender in the language? Or is it neutral? Or do you like French, everything is either male or female, right?
It's feminine, but we say AI, which is, like an abbreviation. So it's hard. But of course, like the way you speak defines the way you look at the world. So I don't know. I also have this feeling that, these are really like men who've been working on all those models, and I'd like to see more women in the topic of AI. I
was at a Fringe event a couple of weeks ago that was women in AI, and it was a very small group and it was a very small gathering, and I was privileged to be the only man that was there, but there were sort of 38 women who were founding companies or working as engineers, like software engineers and data engineers. So there is a small community of women who are doing it, but it's certainly not large enough. So I totally agree with you there. So the next question then to follow that one is when you have an AI personal assistant, what do you think you might name it?
Well, I don't know. Steven, maybe?
Sorry, what was that?
I like the name Steven.
Steven,
Stevie,
okay.
Or Steve, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
Interesting. I like it. No, it's great. It's great. Some people come up with very fancy classical names, and some people, I always joke that I call it Jeff, just because it's sort of a humorous thing that I've always done with software. And anytime I build a software tool, I call it Jeff for some reason.
In Polish, Steven is quite an old school name, but brings like good memories as of, your grandpa, something like that. So
Nice.
maybe that would be a good idea.
I like it. Okay, cool. And just the last one is thinking about the future, maybe 50, 100 years from now. There have been a lot of films over time that have sort of given us a sci-fi vision of the future, whether it's Star Trek and, being the utopia and there's no money and everybody's peaceful and, we're out flying around the universe, or there's kind of Mad Max on the other end where society's completely broken down. There's nothing left and it's chaos. And then there's all the stuff in between, the cyberpunks and all that sort of thing in the middle. And I'm just curious if you had to choose some sort of a film maybe or some sort of sci-fi vision of what the future might be, what you think you would choose? My
dream would be to live in the world from the Avatar Way of Water, the first part of the movie.
Yeah.
When you're in symbiosis with with the whole nature, and you're like always connected, and you can communicate to, you know, trees and flowers and all living creatures, and you only take as much as you can give back. So that's my utopia.
Nice.
But I'm afraid that we're going to witness some severe conflicts based on global warming and the climate change, because some parts of the world in 100 years will be just impossible to live in. Our number is still growing, and I think the UN said that we're going to reach like 12 billion people. That will be like the peak of the number of people on Earth. And then I think that we're rather facing a very ugly scenario of the future, probably with great divisions between people. I mean, a small group of very rich individuals who enjoy peace, comfort, and everything they need, and the rest who are fighting for even survival. But I don't want to like believe in this version, really, because I see that more and more people, you know, are in this state of awakening and realizing that, hey, it can't just go on like that forever. We have to do something. And I really, really hope that we'll come back to seeing the world as like something, you know, given to us to take care of, not something we can like exploit without any consequences. So I'm hoping for that.
I love it. That's a good thing to hope for. And I think it's very much up to us as the current society to hopefully set some ground rules that will help us get to that at some point in the future. But I suspect you're right. I think we'll see some civil unrest at some point, some serious civil unrest that will be a combination of factors. It's not going to be just because of AI. It's going to be because of a whole load of things all, you know, combined into one. And if we do get growing population, but also shrinking places that we can live, there's going to be a lot more competition for the nicer places and places that people can be. And we know how that's turned out historically. But
and technology won't be, you know, the solution to this pain. It won't be like an answer. No, it might help with some of the things, but it's not going to help with all of it. Joanna, thank you very much. It's been a really, really great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks for your time today. And hopefully at some point we can maybe loop back around. I'm sure there'll be some massive story about journalism, and, you know, something will happen. Either, you know, some news group will get caught using AI, or there'll be some massive breakthrough that we'll want to talk about. But you're welcome to come back anytime. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure, and let's meet again sometime. And hopefully next time I'm in Poland, I'll message you, and hopefully we can meet up and have a coffee or something. That'd be great. Yeah, with pleasure. Brilliant. Thanks, Joanna. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.